So first of all, thank you. Thanks for having us today. It is so inspiring. This morning has already been so inspirational of seeing this many heart health advocates in one room. Just amazing. And then really seeing everyone in here who is empowered and who is taking action. And as Jody mentioned, I'm Jenny Cotton. I lead the patient access team for the structural heart business at Medtronic. And Medtronic has been honored to partner with WomenHeart over many years. And in particular, in the last year, we've been keenly focused on really addressing the underdiagnosis and the undertreatment of women with heart valve disease. And when it comes to women's heart health, the path to innovation has been very difficult to discern. Our panel is going to be talking about this innovation, and we know that there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that women face greater risk with heart disease, and that the healthcare system has struggled to provide adequate care for women. We've been talking about this all morning. And what this has resulted in is a one-size-fits-all treatment approach, but also treatment for women. So, and that includes medications, devices. We've talked about the clinical data primarily being for male patients. I believe this morning we even talked about male rats and bats. You guys heard that? So, but we really need to figure out the differences in hearts, right? The differences in men's hearts as well, but women's hearts and how they react differently to treatment, but then also thinking about that from the diagnosis standpoint. So through research and education, we have to understand how heart disease affects women. And WomenHeart was among the organizations that fought for gender-based data reported in clinical trials. So we thank WomenHeart for that. And we're beginning to see more female-centric trials. We at Medtronic have the SMART trial, which compared the leading transcatheter aortic valves in the market and enrolled nearly 90% women. So we were very excited to have, thank you, excited to have the results of that trial that not only looked at morbidity and mortality, but quality of life. We've been talking about not only the life years added, but the quality of that life. And we'll be following that data out to 5 years. So very excited to keep reporting that data and keep reminding of the need for women. We have been a leader in the industry for equity and representation, but we have a saying at Medtronic that innovation is a team sport. And that team really includes everyone in this room. We need all of you to continue to advocate, to continue to have your voice. And Selena, I remember talking to her at a meeting like this, and a saying that she said stuck with me: nothing about us without us. And we take that very seriously at Medtronic when we think about patients, what patients need, and then also including patients in the conversation. So really thank you all for being here, for continuing to raise awareness, to address these issues, and to innovate for women. So you'll hear our panelists today talk about some of the systemic bias that have been barriers, right? That have been barriers to women, to the innovation for women. But we're going to talk about ways that we're overcoming them and ways to stay curious. So we are fortunate to have Alicia Chong Rodriguez of BloomerTech. All right. And Dr. Hayder Hashim of Medstar Washington Hospital Center as panelists. Thank you. Along with our moderator, a WomenHeart champion, Rhonda Monroe. And together they're going to explore some of this innovation, things that we can do to stay curious, and how we're going to develop better solutions for women living with and at risk for heart disease.
I'm Rhonda Monroe, and I am a WomenHeart champion from the class of 2006, and I did it again in 2007. I got sick in 2006, and I was hospitalized, and I did not complete the final day, and so I did it again. Women's heart health is heart health. It literally is. We are the backbones of our families, of our communities. And it was said earlier today, and I can't reiterate it enough, that without us, there is no family structure to support our society and our economy and ultimately our global community. And so again, thank you. Let me tell you a little bit about my heart journey before we jump into this innovative talk. I was 36 years old. I was 5 days postpartum. I was nursing my daughter. She was my third child. I put her in a cradle, and I was going to nap. After 3 children, you learn to nap when they nap, take advantage of every free moment. So I was gonna nap, and I put her in a cradle next to my bed. And I laid down, and I immediately bounced back up. I had crushing substernal chest pain. And I leaned forward on my dresser, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, I think I'm having a heart attack. No, I'm too young to have a heart attack. And then that elephant sat firmly in the center of my chest, and I broke out sweating. I had nausea, and I began to vomit. I had numbness and tingling in my left arm. I had classic male symptoms. So I crawled to the bathroom, and once I finished vomiting, I called 911. And they came. And they did their appropriate protocol, and they administered aspirin and morphine. They had done the EKG, and it read acute myocardial infarction. Nothing cute about it, but it was an acute situation. And off we go via ambulance to the ER. And when I got there, no one took my symptoms seriously. Why? I'm gonna cut through the chase. I wasn't a middle-aged white guy. I presented with every classic symptom. I had a textbook heart attack, an EKG confirmed STEMI, and despite this empirical evidence before their eyes, I didn't show up looking like research says I should look, because it had been studied in middle-aged white men. And because of that, I was dismissed not for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but 7 days. Wow. And given 3 ridiculous diagnoses, a slipped disc, indigestion, and then ultimately a hysterical new mother, despite the fact that when I pulled my clinical records, it said I was stoic. And while I am quite talented, I can't be hysterical and stoic simultaneously. And so here we are. After that, I vowed that I would do what I could do to make a difference. And so for the past 2 decades, I've devoted myself to learning whatever I could learn about cardiovascular disease, about the systems of care in this country, and a little bit internationally. I've served on the board of 2 hospital systems for 6 years. I'm a WomenHeart champion. I served on WomenHeart's board. I was part of HFSA, the Heart Failure Society of America, and helped them launch their inaugural patient committee, then served on their advocacy committee reviewing legislation and regulatory amendments that impacted heart patients. Now I'm part of the Heart Failure Collaboratory. But more than that, what I do is research and regulatory science, making sure that patients have a seat at the table, are listened to, not as an afterthought, but as part of the steering committee, building studies, being part of the research that is done on us, for us. And with that, we'll jump right into this innovation panel. Because research, including patients at the table at the forefront, is really not rocket science, but it is innovative. Hi, Alicia. I'm so happy to have you here, and I'd like for you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, no, I'm very happy to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia. I'm the founder and CEO at BloomerTech. We're a company that started out of MIT's Computational Cardiovascular Research Group. And to give you a little bit of background about myself, I am proudly named Alicia after my grandma, who dedicated her life to women's health as an obstetrician in a time when women were rarely allowed to obtain medical degrees. So when I decided to study electrical engineering and computer science, and there was one or two women in a class of 40, I always would remember my grandma, you know, like she did it, I can do this, right? And when I was choosing where to do my research at MIT, and I learned that heart disease was the #1 killer of women worldwide, for me that was shocking because I knew that my sister had had breast cancer, but I didn't know who in my family had heart disease. So as an adult, learning that my grandma died from a heart attack when I was 12 years old was really eye-opening. And that led me into this journey. When I entered into the lab, we had access to the biggest data sets in the world used today for clinical decision-making in cardiology. And everyone was building AI tools, everyone, right? And we just saw most of this data is predominantly male. How is this going to affect women? Are we just going to perpetuate the problems that we've been talking about because everyone's building algorithms on existing databases? So we decided to do something about it. How can we collect data that is medical grade as fast as possible to make change and generate the next generation of digital biomarkers using the best technology in the world? And that's when we created what we call the BloomerTech, which is a tech-augmented garment, which we'll talk more about, that has our patented textile sensor intelligence, which is in a wearable form factor of a bra. And we'll talk more about it.
Thank you for joining us. And now I'd like for you, Hayder, to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So thank you for having me. My name is Hayder Hashim. I'm an interventional cardiologist out of Washington Hospital Center. I'm also faculty at Georgetown University, other side of town. I'm a father of 2 daughters and a son. My son is the firstborn, but I love my daughters a bit more. Don't tell my wife that. And obviously, I love my wife too. I'm in what I do because I'm probably now the oldest surviving man in my family. A lot of people die, men especially, at a young age from cardiac arrest and heart attacks. My dad is my champion. He played tennis all his life, trying to be healthy, had a heart attack when he was 59. Survived it, died in New York a few years ago. I'm in this because of my wife. She's a breast radiologist. She works at Georgetown here, close by too. She always brought stories home on women. I know we're talking about heart, but I think women health is so under-recognized, especially with breast cancer and how she sees her patients. No access to health care, no screening. We'll talk about the innovation, how I like to advance the science to serve women, not more, but at least equally to other cohorts. There's a lot of, I don't want to say ignorance, but there is a lot of neglect in, as you said, your symptoms, and we'll touch base on some examples. Thank you for having me, though.
I'm happy to have you.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the challenges that exist. I mean, we heard them laid out before us in the previous examples. There's a lack of access, a lack of belief coming from the patient population, a lack of funding to get the data that we need to have information that can be broadly applied to women. So let's talk about the challenges that you faced in pushing forward your work to actually have an impact on women's heart health.
Yes, I think one of the challenges we face in general, right, we talk about being heard in all senses. I think building new technology and trying to create in cardiology something that is unique to women can be a little bit out of what's the normal for people, right? But we see all of these amazing women heart programs. And for me, when I saw in the hospitals all of these women heart programs being created, it was like, oh, there's an opportunity here, because we're seeing all of these amazing cardiologists building these places for women to go to, and we're starting to see how everyone's going into personalized medicine. It's still a challenge, right? The fact that, especially from the economic business perspective, they're seeing cardiology as men and women, right? Like back in 2019, we were pitching at the scientific sessions from the American Heart Association, and one of the judges, the first question is, why are you only doing this for women? Only. Right. 3 cardiologists stood up and responded the question to the judge. It wasn't us responding, which was amazing. One of them, Dr. Annabelle Volkman, I'm sure that you guys know her. Amazing. She stood up like, what is this doctor talking about? And then last year, for the first time, we won a pitch competition at the American College of Cardiology, which is a big deal, right? Like, we see how it has evolved, but we've been doing this since 2018. We graduated, but we started years before. So it is a journey. It takes a while, and one of the challenges is ensuring that people don't lose momentum with us, right? Like, we need the support. We've talked with so many women that have shared us their stories and that have given us feedback for what we're doing. And that is so important to not lose it. Sometimes, like, I see they want it out like tomorrow, but we're doing something that is medical grade and regulated. So it takes a while, and we need to keep everyone's support.
Thank you for that. And
Sure,
Dr.
I'll probably
Hashim?
add a few things. I think the major problem, and I'm going to speak as a clinician mostly, it's women presents with different symptoms. I think there is something, I always tell my mom, I think there is resilience in women. As you said, there is a social stigma as well. Don't want to call 911, go to the hospital, and there is nothing. And then I will, cousin so-and-so will call me, oh, you're crazy, why did you call 911? And this stigma has been generational. I don't think it's getting better, because I still see it in my patients. As I'm driving in, talk about symptoms, I get 2 calls from a local hospital with 2 patients with heart attacks. I'll show you the text. I can't show you the names, but I promise you, I'm on call now, one of my friends covering. So I'm driving in, and they said, there's a guy, played basketball last night, and got some chest pain, showed up to the emergency room, minor heart attack, and I sent a helicopter to bring him. The woman, the second patient, is a woman, exact same age. They're both 58. He's 60, she's 58. The woman, she's been having symptoms for 3 weeks. Yeah, because, you might have the flu. You're short of breath. Went to the primary care, got a Zithromax, Z-Pack, come back, until she is debilitated, and then she says, I need to go to the emergency room, and they have the exact same, which is non-ST elevation myocardial infarction. The EKG is normal, they have elevated biomarkers, but that's where we're dealing with. That's why I believe innovation in teasing out symptoms. If we make, I don't want to talk about AI now, I don't think it's the right platform, but if there is a way that a woman feels symptoms, ignore human beings, take the stigma out, take that thing to the bathroom, put your finger, you're having a problem, go, then probably we start recognizing, because we relied on us teasing out stories or rely on women to report their stories. I don't think that combination is working.
So I do want to go to AI here, since you brought it up.
Gee,
I
didn't want to go there.
I just I was at a conference in Miami last week, and we talked about AI. And these stigmas that you're talking about, the data that's informing AI, these stigmas are built into, because the data that they pull from to do these studies are based on men, are based on Caucasian. A lot of the information we have about heart disease today is based on Framingham. I have nothing against Framingham, Massachusetts, but no one there looks like me, right? And so we're even as we talk about technology and innovation, we're building systems on data that is not generally applicable. It's still the same problem, and so we do need to address that in terms of AI. I had an EKG confirmed STEMI. And they looked at it. It was empirical evidence. It was read by the machine, and still human error entered in because when my face did not match this data, right? So what do you think? How do we account for that? How do we innovate to remove the bias from artificial intelligence? It's built on humans.
Yeah, I'll take this and I'll let Alicia to kind of chime into. She's more into technology than I am. Could barely operate an iPhone, but I do believe what I want to see medicine. I want to see medicine in a way that you should ignore the color, the gender, the way you look. That's why I'm trying to get AI to be a bit more objective than subjective. It shouldn't be. It should be. I put a patch on myself. There are patches now to check your glucose levels. I could tell you the future of patches would be linking to your schedule and say, you know what, you're going to have 3 meetings today. You need to eat more carbs this morning. There is so much predictability now with AI. If I want to see something, I want to take that human error out and then shift with real data. Take this technology, build it. The problem with our own data is, as you said, we don't enroll patients from all kind of spectrums of society. That's why this work is important. We need to get more women. That's why SMART, the valve, which is a woman, there is a company called Shockwave, which is now J&J. They're also doing the same balloon that we used for men in the trial to have it for women. The trial is called Empower. And it's women only because we always thought that calcified coronary artery disease, severely calcified vessels, are only disease of men who smoked or worked in mines, which is absolutely false. So now there are multiple trials who are only women enrollment. We'll talk about more when we talk about the registry I'm building here at the Washington Hospital Center. But there is, I think the data is shifting. I want to have AI to be more objective than subjective.
Agreed. And before you chime in, Alicia, I just want to talk a little bit about the point you made about research studies. So I happen to chair a stakeholder advisory board for the Recharge trial. And it's a national study that's studying only women and minority populations. And the outcomes that we're looking at are not the typical mortality and morbidity, but we're looking at quality of life as well. That's relevant for patient population. And that is really groundbreaking. Nothing like that has been done before. On another note, probably a polar opposite to that, I was asked recently to help a group of researchers out of Rochester who were trying to recruit women. And they came to me and they said, we've only been able to recruit 16 women in 2 years. Can you help us figure out why? She sent me the information, and I literally thought, where's Ashton Kutcher? Am I being punked? Right? The name of the trial, his hyphen CRT. Now, to their credit, they thought it was clever because the doctor, you're an interventionalist, you know where I'm going with this, Wilhelm His discovered the area of the heart that they were trying to do the therapy on, the studying. But they said, well, why can't we recruit women? I said, because no one other than cardiologists, and I'm not even going to say general, but interventionalists are going to immediately recognize that you're talking about Wilhelm His Jr. No one's going to know that. They're automatically going to think gender and say, this study isn't for me. And this is why it's important to have patients at the table up front rather than 2 years later when they say, well, we can't, the NIH told us to stop enrolling and only enroll women, and we've been having trouble. Can you help us figure out why? Alicia, can you chime in here about innovation? And AI in particular.
Yeah, so I'll chime in by sharing with you what we've been building because I brought it, and I think its visuals are always better. This is, can you help me with the microphone? This is the BloomerTech. As you see, it looks and feels like any other bra. It now has sensors that I'll show you, and it can connect to any type of bra, the bra of your preference. It has all of these textile sensors. They're textile-based, so they're flexible, and they're wrapped around all your torso. And these sensors can collect huge amounts of data because unlike a watch or a ring or a patch, that they've worked on technology to make it smaller and smaller. And when you make technology small, the trade-off is the performance, the capabilities. What can it actually do if it's that tiny? We have all of the real estate of the torso. And the torso is a great location to collect physiological data. We can collect multi-lead ECG, we can collect posture, activity, movement, we can collect bioimpedance, so fluid in the lungs, we can look at respiratory rate, shortness of breath, right? Like everything we've been talking about, right? Like we can look at hormones, mostly trends of hormones, not exact values, but we can look at trends of hormones if she's premenopausal, different things if she's postmenopausal, right? Like we've been designing this across each stage of her life. Like this one, for example, is a nursing bra. Because it's simple, she's going to wear a bra anyway, it looks and feels like any other bra that she would wear, and now it collects around 1 gigabyte of data per patient per day, right? So what can we do with this huge amount of data, which someone was talking before about like a personalized approach? If I know what's happening with me and I feel good and all of my tests have been good with my doctor and then suddenly that changes, is this a normal change because I'm going through a change in my life? Or this is an abnormal change and I should get checked, right? Is this a good point? So all of these things, I think we can do reinforcement learning, which is a type of machine learning. When you have symptoms, you can train your algorithms. There's a lot of things you can do with technology once you have it. Now, our first phase is getting everything medical grade because we want, since our inception, to be high quality in terms of how we collect data. So our first clinical study has been an NIH-sponsored study with cardiac rehab patients, right? Because it's very different to measure heart rate after you've had being prescribed of cardiac rehab than before when you are with no predisposed symptoms. So this is for me how I envision the future. We think that this is something that if you have in the closet when you need data the most, you can wear it, collect all of the data you need, and you have access to give it to your doctor. Like, this is what it looks like. You have the data when you need it the most, and not that you go to the doctor and then start getting tested.
So I love this. I love this because it speaks to charities' need of having information about her daughter, who is now 8, but as she becomes prepubescent or pubescent and needs to begin to wear a bra, she can incorporate this and track this over her lifetime so that she has a full body of data personalized to her that she can then use to inform her care team. And I think that's an excellent idea. And I want to hear your thoughts on personalized medicine, Dr. Hashim.
Yeah, so this takes us back to stories. A lot of our patients, they come to the emergency room, we see them in the offices, and we try to apply one size fits all. And that's the problem, and that's where the area of interest to me was what's known as microvascular disease. Obviously, I do stents like any other interventional cardiologies. I treat heart attacks in the middle of the night. I do the run-of-the-mill, make a living, having fun. I have a passion to what I do. But the area of interest to me was what's known as chest pain syndrome X. This is what we did in medicine. If we cause it, we call it iatrogenic. If we don't know what causes it, we call it the idiopathic. This is a way to exit, that's our cash out, I don't know what it is, what's causing it, call it idiopathic. And then when we didn't even know exactly what idiopathic is, we said syndrome X. So women comes in, have chest pain, shortness of breath, you do the whole spectrum of testing and you don't know what's happening. That's what intrigued me to understand why we are limited. Why can't I just find the reason? For many cases, you come in with chest pain, and then I try to do a coronary angiogram, and you have no blockages, and you're done. We were very good at ruling out. I told a lot of my patients, you don't have blockages. you don't need stent, you don't need bypass surgery. But I never told my patients what they actually have. And that's what took me to personalized. Is there a way I could put you in this bucket, put me in this bucket? We both have chest pain, but your chest pain is a stent chest pain. This chest pain, I don't know what it is. So I tried to look into that. And that's when we start doing what's known as microvascular testing. It's more scientific. You know, the arteries bring blood, but most of the circulation happen in arteries that we don't see with conventional angiogram. We see it now with technology that could actually tell me, do you have spasm in the microcirculation? Do you have increased resistance in microcirculation? Do you have neither? So now with confidence, I could tell you it's cardiac pain versus non-cardiac pain. It is a life-threatening issue versus non-life-threatening issues. That's why I believe there has to be, I have the technology now which is helping me a step ahead of to personalize your chest pain. It's not chest pain, everyone has chest pain, it's either this or that. It's now a spectrum of diseases and the treatment is absolutely different. We're testing now treatment for each of these buckets. So personalized medicine, as much as we always talk about, shared decision making. Shared decision making has nothing to do with personalization, by the way. I could share I could tell you have this type of cancer, God forbid, this type of cancer. I share the decision with you, but there's nothing personalized about you. I'm still going to apply what fits you and fits me at the same, So I think it's important to look at diagnostic tools to put every single one of us in a different spectrum of diseases.
You were going to say something?
Sorry, thank you.
I was going to say that ties very well with when we hear that it is harder to recognize, diagnose, and treat women with heart disease, right? And we see in the McKinsey report, there was also, it's 7 times harder compared to diagnose women compared to any man their same age, right? And for me, it's like women are getting detected when it's already too severe, when it's already progressed. And if we had that spectrum that you're talking about, and we can detect it at a non-invasive stage, she's having these symptoms, this is what it looks like, this is how we can treat you to stop progression. Even for hospitals, that's an economic opportunity because coming into an emergency is the most expensive thing for the hospital. They lose money from the emergencies. They earn money because they can schedule you to have the right treatment at the right time. And that's...
So let me jump in here because this is an activated group. They're engaged and involved. And how can we, as WomenHeart champions, as caregivers, as supporters, what can we do to advocate for this personalized, individualized health care? What can we do to come alongside clinicians like you or inventors like you who believe that we deserve adequate care? What can we do to support that? How can we advocate?
Yeah, I'll take this because I think Selena probably should talk about this. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, but it's you got to be your own best advocate. I'm serious. And we talked about this. I tell my patients all the time, don't accept the status quo. The status quo is dissatisfaction is the mother of innovations. That's how I see it. I trained in an era, I trained 16 years ago now. 50% probably of what I did is almost malpractice now. The way I went to the artery, I used to be big needle, stick it, and then hopefully we're in a good spot. Now there is ultrasound. Now there are things, we never accepted the status quo. That's serious. And I remember one of my professors from med school, he told me that what I'm teaching you now, by the time you practice, 50% of what I'm teaching you now will be gone.
Absolutely.
And this is, we used to give Mona for heart attacks, morphine, oxygen, nitrates, and aspirin. Now the algorithm is absolutely different. Morphine, we know it doesn't chime well with patients. Nitro is not indicated for some of the heart attacks that actually causes hypotension, whatever. So your own best advocate, that's 100%, I think it's the way to go. Don't accept the status quo. Don't say, oh, I have chest pain. Okay, go to the emergency room. You keep jumping from emergency rooms. Find the place where they could find a solution because the solutions are there. We're probably privileged because we live in an urban setting. We can access 17 hospitals in 1 mile using the same scooter in Washington, D.C. But this is it. People like you can spread medicine somewhere else, can advocate, can push that the status quo is never good. you have to keep pushing it until we get to the care that's available for everyone.
That's fantastic. And I'm going to move us forward a little bit to our closing thoughts. And I'm going to start with you, Alicia. How would you like to see healthcare change in the next 10 years? Like, what are you most excited about in terms of women heart health for the next decade?
Yeah, so definitely I'm excited about a lot of things, otherwise I wouldn't be dedicating my life to this. One of the things that you were saying ties a lot with this. Cardiology is one of the fields that has the fastest evolved through the years. And I really believe, like in OBGYN, unfortunately, we haven't seen that much advancement, right? Like even till now, we're talking about how menopause is for the first time being discussed and all of these issues. But cardiology, it's a good opportunity because companies are starting to realize that there is a lot that they've been leaving around that is low-hanging fruit, and we could solve it. I think medications are going to get better. I think therapeutics, diagnostics are going to get better. If we partner up, if we ask for sensitivity and specificity, was this test done with people that look like me? I want to know who this was tested on. I want to see if it had biological sex as a variable. Was it sex disaggregated? Even the therapies that they're doing, right? I think for us to be in these conversations makes a big change, and I think AI is going to make a big difference in our lives. But again, if we question the results, we have to ask always what's the sensitivity and specificity of these tests, and was it tested for someone like me? But I think there's a huge opportunity of mixing so many worlds, and I look forward. The next 5 years, I think, how they say, when technology comes in, a lot of things in our life change, and it's always for something better, more democratized, and more accessible for people, and more education for people. So I think everything is intertwining because we're in this type of communities together.
Thank you. Dr. Hashim?
Yeah, not much to add, to be honest with you. I think it's, obviously the future is very exciting, there's no doubt. There's more access to data, there's more access to technology. Keep doing what you're doing. I think this is probably your message, trying to get the word out there, distribute what you know, what you experience with other people that are always get people motivated to look for answers, to look for diagnoses. We care about the heart, obviously, but I told you there's a very long list of diseases that has been segregated to one gender versus another. Breast cancer, I need to go back into it. My wife does volunteer not far from here in Wise, Virginia. You can Google Wise, Virginia. Probably take Google 5 minutes to locate Wise. But it's the salt of the earth. It's the people who actually farm, who bring food to our tables, and they have zero access. She goes in, she sleeps in the same mobile truck, trying to do mammograms. There are multiple technologies now. There are some testing that could get the same screening technologies to far areas. Keep doing what you do. I think the future is bright. I know we live in D.C., don't want to get into politics, but the future is still bright. We live in a great country, there's no doubt. And with people like you, understanding, sharing, willing to share. Not many people are willing to share. So I think the future is good. Technology is coming. We'll make it happen.
I couldn't agree more. I'm super, super excited about this summit, this inaugural summit. We are at an important time, at an intersection where healthcare is changing, where regulatory laws are changing, where funders are not giving money if you don't study women, if you don't have a diverse population. And so having this conversation at this time really puts us at a pivotal moment to move this forward with momentum. And we can talk about these things, and we can talk about what the value proposition is. Because if we're not included, you're not getting funding. If we're not included, you're not getting FDA approval. And so we really have a value proposition to bring to the table so that these funders understand that our voice matters, not just our outcomes. but our input into the designs of the study, the design of the products, and all of the work that you're doing, we have something to come to the table with. And we can take that same value proposition to lawmakers on Capitol Hill, to regulatory bodies who have already bought in and have issued guidances on what the requirements are for including women and minority populations. And so I'm excited that it's not going to just be talk anymore, that the healthcare system is going to have to put their money where their mouth is, or they won't get any more. And I wanted to, he's not on our panel, but he is honorarily. So I wanted to talk to, so one of the areas that I've become an expert, if you will, a patient expert, is cardiogenic shock. And that is an area, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's an area that has an extremely high mortality and morbidity. And the needle hasn't moved in 3 decades. The Sky Shock table, and I'll let you talk about that a little more, but Sky Shock classification came out about a year ago, and then some updates to that to improve the mortality and morbidity of patients who experience cardiogenic shock. A lot of them, it happens right after they have an AMI. Some, it happens with heart failure. But we have an innovator in this space in the room today. He's part of ANOVA. And ANOVA has really been at the forefront of cardiogenic shock and putting together something that had not been thought of, which was a shock team. And the good news about the shock team is that someone in Wise, Virginia can get it, as well as someone who lives here in the area where they have access to tertiary care. And so I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about that, but I know that Carolyn Rosner has done a lot of work in that area, and they've really developed a team approach to addressing cardiogenic shock, which has been innovative and has really saved lives. And so I'll let you speak to that, if you will.
Absolutely. My name is Shashank Desai. I'm one of the heart failure doctors at ANOVA. And to the point you're raising, that the idea of really sort of emergent, urgent cardiac care was one that was really left up to the emergency rooms for so long. And all of us as cardiologists sort of sat in our offices waiting for patients to eventually get to us. The problem was when we start looking at mortality of cardiac disease across this country, you start realizing that half of it is emergent. I will give you the number. If you are a heart attack survivor and you make it to the emergency room, the two of us have the ability to walk in and say, you're one of the lucky ones, because 50% of people don't survive to make it to the emergency room, their first heart attack. So you start saying, how do you provide care for emergencies? And we can talk about disparities, but the fact is that we, as the health system, never had a system where we could take someone who emergently had heart shock from a heart attack or from other reasons, some outside space, and we, as a health system, did not have the ability to improve their survival any more than 30%. And so if you needed care, our system of 911 didn't provide that. And in DC, all of our health systems have gotten together and really created a shock network in DC. Actually, Detroit was one of the first places this actually started up. And it was based around devices. And we can talk a little later about devices and applicability of trying to save someone to get them to a place where they can either have an angioplasty or a heart transplant to actually survive. And the fact was that, like you brought up, it's a team-based approach. Actually, the individual you referenced, Carolyn Rosner, who has actually driven a lot of this, was actually one of our heart failure nurse practitioners and took this on. And the fact was you needed interventional cardiologists and heart failure doctors and surgeons, but you needed a health system to get behind really a group of individuals who did not have access to surviving and really kind of turn things around. And really all of our health systems, as we started implementing processes, how quickly can we get the patient over? How quickly can a doctor in Wise, Virginia pick up the phone and get 7 of us on a phone call to figure out what's the best next thing to do, because this patient is probably going to not survive more than an hour. So how do you move things along? And that process alone, in the absence of even new technologies, has allowed us to sort of change survival of shock patients from these 30-40% into the 70% range. So we as a health system do have to change our processes. Technology is great, medicines are great, but boy, we really have to have access and processes that address a lot of our failings.
Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself. And so that's the key. And you mentioned, you alluded to devices, so ECMO and Pella and all of those things that are used to treat shock. But recognition of shock and having a team approach where if this person doesn't recognize it as shock, that one, or that one may. So a 7-person team is really, really not rocket science, but innovative in a way that it enables patients to have a better opportunity of survival, better outcomes from 30 to 70%, when for 30 years we remained stagnant and mortality and morbidity had not changed. We've been able to move the needle in this critical care area, and there's even a new society for critical care cardiology that is championing this, and it's all because of innovative thought processes that have brought people together around the table to improve outcomes. And if outcomes are getting better, or in general, the outcomes are getting better for women as well. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your participation. I thank you for your input. We appreciate you, and I look forward to the rest of a wonderful summit.